Salut! I know that French pronunciation can be tough, even for me. Les chaussettes de l'archiduchesse sont-elles sèches, archi-sèches? Les chaussettes de l'archiduchesse sont-elles sèches, archi-sèches? Are the archduchess socks dry? That one is a famous tongue twister, but even everyday words can be tricky to pronounce for a non-native. That's why I wanted to offer you a special episode today. I'm very happy to welcome Geri Metz, the French Phonetics Fanatic, for a special interview. Geri is an American francophile with a long experience in the French language and a deep understanding of its phonetics, which I don't. And even though she goes by her nickname Geri, her actual first name is also Geraldine. Yay! There aren't a lot of us in the world, and I'm glad she's such a wonderful woman and teacher. Geri's been teaching French pronunciation to Anglo-Americans at the university, and now she's ready to help you with online video lessons over at pronouncingfrench.com. You will find a direct link to her website on the blog. We've had a very interesting conversation about your difficulties, her ideas and experience, and the tips that will help you the most quickly, and some problems of French pronunciation that might surprise you. Salut, c'est Geraldine. Bienvenue sur Comme une Française TV. Sound French, even to the French. Let's dive in. Bonjour, Geri. I'm so happy you're here, not only because I love your work, but also you're called Geraldine. So it's a double win here.
Ce sont les deux Geraldine.
C'est ça, exactement. So we've been talking about this for months, and I'm glad you're finally here. So before we dive into broader stuff, there's a question I would like to ask. I know that you're a francophile and a master of the French language on some areas, way better than I am. So can you tell me, what's your favorite French word?
My favorite French word is crépuscule.
Oh, yeah. Can you tell us what it is?
I think that is such a beautiful word, crépuscule, the twilight. And it's a beautiful word in English too, twilight. But and it's a beautiful part of the day. And I just think the French word is so lyrical and magical, like crépuscule.
That's even a bit difficult to say. Crépuscule, I think, for English speakers.
Maybe because of the U, crépuscule. But it's very front. The French language is very tense and spoken more in the front of the mouth, and so you have crépuscule, the vowels all in the front of the mouth, which is very typically French. Crépuscule.
Yeah, and
I think that's
this one is already pretty hard. But what do you think is the most difficult word to pronounce for English speakers?
Oh, wow. Well, there's a bunch. I did a series on my YouTube channel called The Hard Words in French. And I took that from a survey that had been taken of English expats, living in France, what words they thought were the hardest. So I took up those words, and we had, for example, rince, which really bedevils the English speaker, and Rouen. And there was a merveilleux on that list, and millefeuille on that list. But I think the one that is the maybe not the hardest word in French, but of that list it was the hardest, and maybe it is the hardest, is serrurerie.
Oh, and why do you think these are so difficult?
The locksmith shop, serrurerie. Well, number one, it's loaded with R's. Serrurerie. And the first part of that word is not that hard because you have serru. But the second part of that word, you have a mute E in it. And a lot of non-French speakers are not, well, even French speakers probably don't realize the rules, but there are rules when you keep the mute E, when you pronounce it, and when you don't pronounce it. And most of the time, you drop it and you don't pronounce it. But if you didn't know that, you would try to put that mute E in, and you would have say, and really, now you're almost choking on all of those R's. But it's not like that. That mute E gets dropped. So you have say, ri. And if you drop the mute E, it's not all that hard, but there's still a lot of R's in there, and R's are challenging for the English speaker.
I had no idea about the being dropped and having rules about this, because for us it's instinct. And very often when students ask me, well, not very often, but often enough for me to feel a bit embarrassed. I have no idea. And indeed, serrurerie is fun because we say it twice, but they're very close. We say serrurerie, serrurerie.
Serrurerie.
And
Serrurerie.
maybe in the South they would say serrurerie, but that's weird.
No, I don't think you would ever say it. For example, even in all of those shops, we drop the mutie, like boulangerie,
Yes.
or boucherie, or épicerie, and serrurerie. It's the same principle. You drop those muties.
Absolutely. Cool, I just learned something. I hope you don't ever need a serrurier because it's usually a bad sign.
True.
Cool. So when I speak to Comme Français students, one of the difficulties they often tell me about is how to make the difference between the et, the the on, the these kind of things like j'ai mangé ou je mangeais, which can sound the same, but they don't. So do you have an idea about that? How do you help your students hear the difference and say the difference between these et, on, these, I know they can be very scary for students. So what do you tell your students?
Well, in particular, the A and the E, that does bring up a very interesting thing. The E, as in café,
yes,
is what we call a closed E.
Okay.
And the E, as in bête, is what we call an open E.
Okay.
So you have E, and they literally are more closed and open in the mouth. When you say E in the mouth, you have the tongue rounded, raised, round in the front of the mouth, E. And when you say it lowers a little bit, the tongue. So you have E. So E is more closed, and E is literally a little bit more open in the mouth. E. And there is a thing in French called the law of position, which says that when you have an open syllable meaning that you have a vowel sound on the end, like café, then the vowel is going to be the closed vowel, E. And when you have a closed syllable, like bête, closed off by a consonant, E, then the vowel is going to be the open E. And if that's all there were to it, and that is the tendency, it's almost physiological tendency for the French to want to make E like français, because it's an open syllable, or Anglais, it's like a desire to want to make that the closed E. But on top of that, we have the overlay of the grammarian, who tells us that when the spelling is the imperfect spellings, the AIS, AIT, or E grave S, like succès, that those are supposed to be pronounced with an open E, to make a distinction between the future and the conditional. Je parlerai, or je parlerai. But I think that what we're finding is that the tendency to have that closed vowel in an open syllable like français is very, very strong. And then you have the other pull of the grammarians who tell us that we must open that to make the distinction. So you have a kind of an opposing pull there. And what we found in research in the late 20th century phonetics research is that probably the modern French speaker is going to aim for something in between those two. You're not going to say succès.
No.
But you're maybe not going to say succès either. You're going to come a little bit in between. We call that an E moyen, a middle E, a little bit in between the two. Now, the Academy would probably say, no, it's supposed to be l'anglais parlait de son succès, but that would sound pedantic, I think, to most people now.
Absolutely. I had no idea. And absolutely. And that's usually something that's very difficult for some students who are beginning to understand that the way that French is spoken is not the way it's supposed to be said. And it can be frustrating for them. So why are you saying that this way? I don't know, that's how we say. So usually we have two kind of students, either they accept the fact and they embrace it, or they completely say, no way, I'm saying it like the book says, and then never ever speak French. And so we talked about A and E. What about en and these super scary ones?
E
And en.
Well, is that's different. That's a nasal vowel, and the nasal vowels are there are other languages that have nasal vowels, but French is really known for its nasal vowel. Bon, enfant, la France, le vin. Traditionally, in phonetics, traditionally, we always said that there are four nasal vowels. There is en, like enfant. There is on, like bon. There is un, like vin. And then there is un, like parfum or un, the number un.
Yeah.
Now that one has definitely changed over the years. That very few people are going to say parfum. And most people are going to say a little bit more like parfum, almost like
more
vin.
open. Yeah.
A little bit different. And I think that when I hear you speak in your lessons, I notice that your nasal vowels are not like I would teach them, because you're modern, you're young, and you're under the influence of the changing language. And languages change.
Absolutely.
I mean, they change. Of course, the phonetician and the teacher is trying to hold the line. Hold the line and say, no, it should be like this. That's the way it's always been. And there always will be a little bit the pull between the older and the newer. But what I teach is I teach the three normal vowels, the and the on and the un. But the un, I say, has definitely changed and is leaning a whole lot more toward un, like vin, like parfum, or un garçon, un, as opposed to un. I mean, that was I think actually un was the least attractive sound in the French language. So I'm not sad to see it go.
Yeah, that's true. And also it might be very hard to hear the difference between those. So students might be happy that they're disappearing because they were so close. I remember when I was teaching at the Red Cross, we have different nationalities. And when I was teaching to people from an Arabic language who were speaking Arabic as a native language, there were some sounds they couldn't even hear. They couldn't hear the difference between them.
Right.
So for them, I just told them, just don't worry, it's fine. Just do with what you can. There are other sounds that you will hear better than English-speaking people, for example. But it's funny how there's some sounds that you can't even hear.
Yes, and that's, yes. And of course, the ear is, I mean, there's no getting around it. Some people have more skill at hearing it, just like with music. You know, some people can sing on pitch and some people cannot. You know, they just don't hear it. They just don't hear it. But most people, I think, well, English, of course, that's my only concept. I don't have, Arabic or something. I don't know. But I think the English speaker can hear most of the French sounds.
Yeah.
Most English speakers can get accustomed to it.
And what
without
about
too much trouble.
What about the E?
The E, like EU spelling?
Yes,
like peu?
Like heureux.
Like peu, heureux. Right, that does bother some English speakers. Heureux. You kind of have to hear it, but then you have to learn how to make it in the mouth too.
Yeah.
So if you learn how to make it, that that you hold your mouth in a certain way, you round your lips. You bring the corners in a little bit. The tongue is raised in the front of the mouth. So when I give my lessons, I teach. I take up each individual vowel and consonant so that we learn that, but we also learn how to put it all together in a sentence, because that matters too. How to join the la chaîne.
Yeah, or
La chaîne parlée, how to put it all together in a sentence. But each individual sound we do take up, the E is harder for people. Heureux.
With the R in the middle.
With the R in the middle, yeah.
We've talked about these four difficulties: the E, the the on, and the E. And if you want the audience, if there are some beginners out there or people who want to really master their pronunciation, and for example have a quick win, What do you think you can give as a tip or insight that yields the most result for the least effort? Like they watch this video and they can learn and they can do that straight away.
Well, you can say many different things, but I think that for me, the fundamental, like the bottom line of what I teach is that, and I say it on my website, we have to unlock the mystery of what the French do to sound French.
So what are those?
I think this is like the bottom line, and I do think that I'm a little unique in teaching this, because if what is the French doing in their mouth to make those sounds? What are they doing? And if I do the same thing, I should be able to make the same sound. So the English speaker is coming from a mouth which is extremely relaxed, especially the American speaker. The British English speaker, I think, already has more tension in their mouth, a little bit more in their speech, but the American English speaker is just soft and relaxed and mushy, you might say. And the French mouth is exactly the opposite. The French mouth is tense and tight all the way along. And the tip of the tongue is most of the time down behind the bottom teeth with tension in the tip. The tongue is raised, rounded in the mouth. In the English mouth, it's lying flat. In the French mouth, it's raised up, rounded in the mouth, quite more toward the front. The lips are rounded and very tense. The corners of the lips come in a little bit with tension. So you have that look, that French look. And when you put all those things together and you make a sound, the sound that comes out is as you were saying, And that is what we call the pause sound, or the typical French sound. The sound that a language comes back to when you're looking for a word. Je cherche, enfin, you come back to that comfortable, basic mouth position that is the French mouth. And of course, as I said, the English mouth is so totally different from that. So I think that you get a lot of mileage out of learning to put your mouth like the French are holding their mouth. And if you do that, you start to get that habit, all of your sounds are going to sound more French. The other thing that I think is important is what we call open syllabication. And I think these two things, if you master them, if you get these two things, it's going to take you a long way down the road to good pronunciation. And open syllabication just sounds funny, but what it means is that the French end every syllable with a vowel sound. The syllable is open. It's open with a vowel as opposed to closed with a consonant. The English language does just the opposite. We end all our we end all our syllables with consonant sounds.
Yes.
We end all the syllables with consonants. So you have a harshness, a kind of a Germanic harshness in the language in English that comes from we like consonants. We hit consonants hard all the time. The French do just the opposite. They minimize the consonant. They maximize the vowel. So that, for example, an English speaker would say, for example, perhaps, elle est en Espagne. Elle est en Espagne. And what are you saying? You're saying elle est en Espagne. So you're closing your syllables with consonant sounds.
Yeah.
The French would say, elle est en Espagne. Elle est en Espagne. Opening every one of those with a vowel sound. And it changes everything in the sound of the language. It changes everything. It makes it more lyrical, more musical, lighter. Elle est en Espagne, not elle est en Espagne. You see, there's a huge difference. You hear this difference when the French speak English.
Yes.
When they bring over their French accent, which we find so charming, when they bring over their French accent onto English speaking, you hear this. For example, we say in English, white shoes. White shoes. The French would say, I am wearing my white shoes. White shoes, which sounds to us like, why choose? Why choose this? Why choose? Because the French is not going to say white. They're going to say white shoes. And you hear how lighter it sounds. It sounds lighter and softer. You hear it when they say, I like that. I like that. I like that. I like that. So I think if the student of English, the student of French, the English student, will listen to French speakers and listen to when they're speaking English, and you catch that and you say, aha, that was open syllabication. So the tenseness of the French mouth, the tightness, and the open syllabication, I think answers your question. Those two things, which are the foundation of what I teach, I think are the best hint, the best thing I can tell people to having a good French accent.
I love it. Yeah. It helps me to speak English better as well. So that's really great, because students ask me that all the time, and I think I know the answer. But with Commune Française in the vocabulary and pronunciation course, I'm very clear that I'm not going to help them erase their accent totally. I think that's not possible. I think the accent can be cute as well. As you said, the French accent is cute. For me, the British accent, the American, any accent I love, because it's musical and it's nice, and I can hear where the people are coming from. So I think it's very hard to clear off, but your course looks like it's more ambitious on this topic, and you have insight that I don't. So do you think like that people can lose their accents?
Yes, I do. And as I said before, so much of it does depend on your ear, your ability to hear and to imitate, not just to hear, but to imitate. But I do believe, because I myself had to come through the same process. You know, I had no French in my background. I took it in school like any kid, you know. But as I went along in my studies, I went through the same, basically what I teach in my course is what I learned I had the privilege of studying the materials of two great French phoneticians who taught in the United States, and whose teaching covered really most of the 20th century. You know, one was older and one was younger, and it went for a long time that they taught their method. And that I was privileged to be one of the students of that method. And I think that if you have good instruction and good exercises to practice, very important, not just the instruction, but it's just like with the piano, you practice every day. You know, you practice. So I give instruction, but I also give audio exercises where you slowly build up your habits, and you start to develop a new habit. And so, to the extent that my accent is pretty good in French, or hopefully very good, but to that extent, I would have to say that yes, you can overcome completely your native accent with good instruction and good exercises, because I had to do it, and you know, and I think I succeeded, and I think others can succeed.
Yeah, I agree, but my point of view would be rather that losing your accent shouldn't be your goal. It's more about having the best pronunciation you can, because it's really hard, and unfortunately I've seen many students being disappointed by trying to lose it and being spotted after one syllable by French people as not being French. And I'm very sorry, but I can do that with anyone. And I know that students told me, yeah, I said bonjour and he knew I wasn't French. Yeah, at the bon, I knew you were not French. Just because it's as you said, it's the mouth. It's many things. I think there's one or two people I've ever heard that I didn't know were not French. But it's so hard. That's just rather like learn with you how to put your mouth and understand how French is spoken and improve your pronunciation to be understood, rather than try to lose it desperately and be disappointed. So be as good as you can.
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely, I think, two ways to look at it, and you know, your way is much more generous.
I don't want people disappointed. That's my thing.
Well, I think that originally these teachings were aimed at specialists in French, like the French majors in college. That's the kind of student who took this course. Those who really cared about, they really wanted that. They had that as a desire. They were going to become teachers of French. They wanted to be the best teacher they could be, and so forth. But you're right. Do the best you can. Just do the best you can. But I do think that in my course, if you care about trying to sound as authentic as possible, I do give you the tools to do that.
I agree. For me, like learning from you is like going from here to there. It's a big step forward. It's not like a little step. It's a really big step because you theorize how we French people speak, which I had no clue because this is not what I studied. I can help people with popular French, slang, everyday French that we say at the boulangerie, anywhere. But the theorization of how I put my mouth is not something I can teach.
Right. And of course, and it's true, the native speaker never knows what they do. You don't know what you do. I don't know what I do in English. I do because I study it. But the average speaker is not going to say, oh, my mouth is here, my tongue is there. That's what you have to learn.
That would be way too weird. I had prepared questions, but I have two little things that I've been reviewing this afternoon that I would love to ask you.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Sure.
Could you tell us about two things? First, the rhythm of French, because again, this is like what you were saying about the vowels, and that's something I had never thought about. The rhythm of a phrase and the word of how French people would say it and English people would say it.
Yes, and that is another place where French and English are at the opposite ends. Because in English, as you know, the accent can go any place on the word. You have photograph, you have photographer, you don't know where. If you weren't the native or you were looking in a dictionary, you would have no idea where the accent goes. And where the accent goes influences the whole rhythm of the language. So in English we have da 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 da, and in French every syllable in French has the equal value.
Yes,
has an equal value. So everything, there are no accents in French. I mean, virtually, you don't say accent. You don't say. I always use the word organization as a good example, because we say organization, da 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 da. And we raise the voice for the one syllable that is accented. We say organization, we hit it stronger and we raise the voice, organization. Whereas the French, organisation, da 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 da, da 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 da, all completely equal. And so that is a very hard thing for the English speaker to bring into French. It's true. I mean, I find myself often putting an accent, like for example, we say Wednesday.
Yes.
And there's a tendency to say mercredi.
That's
because
so weird.
You want to carry that accent over. And of course, in the French, they absolutely does not have that accent. Every syllable is like pearls. We say like pearls on a necklace. Da 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 da. All equal. It's a big, huge difference between the two languages.
And what advice do you give to the students to lose this accentuation? Because for me in English, I gave up. It's just too difficult. I know students tell me in the comments, just that's how we say it. I'm like, thank you, that's super nice, but I just can't. My ear just doesn't hear it, and my brain doesn't remember.
Right.
So what do you tell your students to do?
I think actually the only thing you can do is to remember to keep every syllable equal and the same. No higher levels of voice.
Yeah.
No emphasis until the only one accent that we say in French. There is only one accent in French, and it's an accent of length on the last syllable. So organisation. So yon is just a little bit longer, than the others. And that's the only accent. It's just going to be higher. It's not going to be more strong. It's just going to be a little longer. And it is a hard one to overcome. I agree. I think it's one of the hardest things. It doesn't affect your sound. All the words can be pronounced properly, but it's when you bring all those words together, you don't want to hear da 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 da, like da 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 da. In French, it's da 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 da.
Can we tell students they should sound boring? In French, sound boring. That's my tip for today.
Sound boring. Everything is the same. Sound boring. That's a very good. I like. I'm going to remember that one. Sound boring. Da 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 da. It's almost like a monotone in a sense.
Yeah, in French we're going to. It's more about we're going to eat some letters, or we're going to put some musicality differently. It's going to be mostly the use of different words that shouldn't be there, or are more familiar, that should be in the phrase, that I think give the musicality of the language rather than beautiful music.
Right. Yeah, and another thing I think that we do, we tend to bunch letters together, and I like to use the example because I was a student at Middlebury College. People say, we had a wonderful summer at Middlebury. So you say, we had a wonderful summer at Middlebury. So there are 3 peaks, but all the others are kind of bunched together. We had a wonderful summer at, whereas the French would say, we had a wonderful summer at Middlebury.
Yes, and I understand that.
We had a wonderful summer at Middlebury, but da 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 is the English rhythm. It is more colorful in a sense, the English rhythm. Like you say, the French is like, it is boring, and it's not boring, but it's all the same. It's all the same. Having said that, there are other little accents in French that I tell my students to pay attention when they hear French speakers. Like, for example, you say, c'est formidable. So there are certain places where you do make a little bit of an emphasis. You hold the consonant a little longer, or fantastique, or certain emotional expressions. But except for those, it's da 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 da.
Yeah, that's maybe emotional French.
Yeah, an accent of enthusiasm, or and I'm sure you find younger people using perhaps more of those. Yeah, things like that.
Absolutely. So, one last question. We've been talking for half an hour. I'm so honored to have you. So I want to ask you one last question that I prepared, so I'm reading my notes. In all these years of teaching, you've been teaching to so many students. There's always the one student whose story and progress especially moved you. They progressed way better than you thought. Maybe it was a couple who had an amazing success that they didn't expect, which is very often with my own students. They come back to me, I had no idea I could do that. Yes, you can. Or even someone who reached their personal goal last week that you want to share. So could you share like 2 or 3 student stories that made you the proudest with us?
I have a couple. I'm going to refer to some notes here.
Go on.
As you know, my teaching is online now.
Yeah.
So I don't have personal contact with the students unless they write to me, unless they send me a message. And I have gotten some very nice messages that made me feel proud. And one of them said, the recognition that the French end their syllables after the vowel sounds has been huge for me. So just that thing was a success for that woman. And another one said, as an expat in France, I struggled for 10 years trying to learn the language, but never felt at ease speaking because of my American accent. I had no idea how to overcome this obstacle until I discovered your work. So that made me feel good, too, that I felt, proud of that. And this was one I like. She said, it is really fun to feel in my own mouth how to form the correct sound. And I thought that was kind of cute that she can feel it in her own mouth. But I think the one that I feel the proudest of came from a woman who had been a professor at a university in an English-speaking country, and she wrote this. I'd like to read a little bit of what she said. It made me feel the best. Sounding like an English person speaking French has been a huge barrier to my progress in learning the language. I've lived in France now for 5 years. I've tried a number of programs, but no matter how much I tried to imitate the sounds, it never sounded right. Your course has changed everything for me. And that one sentence, I think, is really the jewel. Your course has changed everything for me. I just knew there was more to the sounds of speaking French, but without your teaching, I just couldn't learn what these are. Your course told me exactly what I needed, so I now feel a lot more confident. Everyone learning French should have this teaching. So that made me, that was the jewel that made me feel really good. And I'm so happy that lady communicated that to me.
Absolutely. And as I've been telling you since I've contacted you, is that I've learned so much about my own language with you. That's very, very good. So thank you so much, Geraldine. That's funny. It means a lot to me and to our audience that you were here today, because again, I admire your work, your teaching, your professionalism, and all the things I've learned with you. So thank you. And
thank you so much for having me and for exposing me to your students. It's just always a delight to see your beautiful face.
Thank you. So to the audience watching, you will find the link to Geri's site here below. And you can go and check everything she's doing. She's really awesome. Bye, Geri.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening. You can find out more about Geri and her courses on pronouncingfrench.com. I hope you learned a lot today. I know I did. Et toi, with which French pronunciation do you struggle the most? Tell me in French if you dare in the comment section. I would love to hear from you, and it's perfect practice every week. If you're on YouTube, you will find a link below the video to the blog communefrancaise.com. On the site, I read all the comments and answer all your questions too. Do you like this video? Do you want more, like an exclusive lesson on how you can make the difference between A and E? Subscribe now to join my Everyday French Crash Course. It's a free 10-day mini course to sound French, even to the French. It's super easy to join. Leave me your first name and your email and you will receive lesson 1 immediately. And best of all, it's all free. Merci for watching Comme une Française TV. Sound French, even to the French. Allez, salut!